Hi, my name is Paul Schürch and welcome to my shop. This class is called Marquetry 101 and is the third class in the series of online hand-skill learning programs. This particular marquetry class is suitable for people of all ages and all skill levels. We'll be making a small marquetry pattern which is somewhat of a traditional flower motif. It can be used to decorate a jewelry box like this one that we made in the first class of this series, or it could be inlaid into a woodworking project like a solid wood table or even a chair back. This class is a simplified version of the marquetry process and should be fun and easy to do. Tools and supplies that you'll need. Well, first you'll need a scroll saw that can hold a 2/0 or a 2/0 blade. And if you've purchased the optional marquetry kit from us, containing veneer, 2 sheets of maple, poplar, that would be some walnut burl, cherry, at least a couple of cherries, and gray board, which I call paper chipboard or gray board, 2 sheets of that, some gum tape, bushing canvas, glue-up bag, and for the tools we have scroll saw blades, there'll be 12 of them in here, and pin nails, and a pair of very sharp V-tong tweezers for assembling the marquetry pattern. You'll need a couple of additional tools. A camping stove with a frying pan and washed silica sand, not beach sand, but silica sand, and some clamps, glue, and platens, and some other items that you possibly may need would be found at a hardware store. Marquetry can come from a variety of sources, at least the drawings can. You can download them online, which is a process of selecting a picture. They can come from coloring books. This is botanical resources of maybe a picture book. Scroll saw techniques and magazines occasionally have patterns which one can use, or you can even go straight to larger books like this Marquetry book by Pierre Ramond that has beautiful examples of marquetry that has been done in the past. Either way, the cartoons are readily accessible, but how do you translate that into a pattern which you can use? So here I have a downloaded cartoon or a picture of a marquetry pattern, and I've made, with this clear acetate, I can put this acetate over a drawing and sketch it with this Sharpie pen. You know, certainly you can go from scratch, which would be doing a rough sketch and a process of refining it, but this kind of leapfrogs over that process. Once I have a basic drawing that's done, and this drawing was taken here and enlarged in a photocopy machine. A photocopy machine for me is one of the most valuable drafting tools I have. I can enlarge and reduce and be able to get things to fit into a certain size so they look proportionally correct. For this one, I wanted to design a small oval panel that we could easily do, and this is sort of where I came to. The oval, I downloaded from online, just on Google Images. I'm able to get an oval, correctly proportioned, be able to enlarge it and reduce it, so I can actually take it underneath my drawing and see if it might be the right size. Here, when I get to the final stage of refining, I have the pattern is a little bit larger than my original intended size. It makes it easier to draw on it. It makes it easier to write on it and to see some detail. Here I'm finishing numbering all the pieces. This is like 8. I think there's a number 9 here, and this is all done sequentially, so I'm able to number it. If I make a mistake on this drawing, I can always take a little bit of alcohol and a Q-tip, and I can erase drawings, or I can erase lines to correct myself. So with this cartoon drawing, there's a few elements in here that I look for. Once I have this pattern done, any piece which is smaller than a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch will be very tough to handle. So I want to make sure that all the pieces are grouped together in larger segments that are larger than that. Another thing, sand shading. Well, sand shading provides depth and realism to any marquetry image. And the way that I show that is determine where my sun is coming from or where my light source, and everything which is underneath gets a series of dots. When this piece comes out of the packet, I'll take it over to sand shading, which is hot sand, and I'll actually scorch the veneer to make it dark or to give this illusion of shadow. So the 3 rules are, anything that's below gets sand shaded, such as this leaf right here. This leaf right here is underneath, and it's also tucked underneath this petal of a flower, so that would get a series of dots or sand shading. Also with the, here this is behind, and that would be the second rule, is any image that's behind another image gets that series of dots or that sand shaded. And the third rule is if there's 2 veneers which are the same color, such as this rose, you'll have to sand shade one edge or the other, but usually never both. So with those 3 rules, I've been able to make my dots in the drawing and then finally reduce it down to the actual size that I need, and then print out 3 photocopies. The 3 photocopies are used for, one is for the cutting cartoon, and this is the actual pattern that we'll cut out on. One as a reassembly to kind of establish where the pieces go, and the third one is to archive or put away since you might need it for some reason later. So all told, if you can see, here's the acetate. This is what we're going to be producing, this piece here. And now I would say it's time to select our veneers. There's a huge variety of veneers which are out there, which are available to us. Over 125 species can be obtained, small pieces or large flitches of veneer from a variety of businesses and distributors throughout the United States and Canada. There's certainly wood, B&B Rare Woods, and there's so many different places to get it that you should not have a problem finding the veneer that you need. If you have gotten the optional kit, this has come with some veneer that I would like to kind of go through and take a look at. I first have some walnut burl. This is rotary cut off of a walnut burl log, and it's very beautiful and interesting. There's also maple. The 2 parts here are 2 pieces of maple, poplar, cherry, and another piece of walnut. Now, when I start assembling a pattern or selecting veneers for any kind of a pattern, such as the one we're going to build, I'm looking for contrast. Light versus dark, not necessarily color. I want to have an image which will pop, or if I have a dark background, I'd have a light image, or a light background and have a dark image. Also within the image, I want to have colors which contrast with each other to make it visually interesting. Here would be an example of this cherry and this piece of elm that has a very similar color contrast, very little color contrast, even though the grain is quite different. I would be hesitant to use these 2 veneers right next to each other. So in selecting veneers for this image, I'm going to start with saying, okay, this walnut looks really good as a background, and I can orient this in any way for this particular image. The maple itself, I have 2 different grain directions, and I would put these in where this central rose is. This is a focal point. It's a very light, it's a very brilliant contrast. And I'm putting 2 sheets in because I can select which grain matching works best when I start assembling. So we'll cut out actually all this at the same time, and we'll be able to select. For the leaves, I have this poplar, and this can be used for the leaves, and then you see I have a leaf going this direction and this direction, so I will be putting 2 layers of poplar in here and to select the right one out for the appropriate leaf. The cherry is for these 4-way blossoms here, or these 4-petaled blossoms. I can also put veneer in going both directions in here, and then select out the one that has the best grain match. One additional element is these buds. Now these buds can be another veneer, yellow veneer or some other contrasting veneer that needs to contrast with this cherry, or we can use a different colored wood, or I can actually just use the leftover of this maple. Since this maple is not going to be, it's going to be separated from this image, the maple will contrast nicely with the cherry, which is the petal surround. Welcome to segment 2 of Marquetry 101. In this segment, we are going to be building the packet and we're going to begin cutting. So I'd like to start off with the cartoon and making the packet. Now there's a few stages here, and this would be the first one that I would like to start. With your kit, or if you have notebook backer, this is called paper chipboard. It's about between a 32nd and a 16th inch thick. This is a great foundation to be able to make one of these packets. So what I need to do first is mount this packet. Well, to really get a better idea, let me cut it down to size. And let me mount it approximately in the middle of this paper chipboard. So once this has been mounted, I need to affix it with spray adhesive. Okay, and now I need to affix the cartoon. Burnishing it down with a rag or a cloth affixes it securely onto the gray board. So also with this packet, I have another piece of gray board or paper chipboard, and I want to put this together into a sandwich. That's what I call them. You must be getting around lunchtime. Okay. Now I have a packet in which to place the veneer. I need to reinforce this in some way through the cutting process and through the sand shading process where it won't fall apart. Again, this is real wood veneer and it is very fragile, as you can see. So what I like to do is I'd like to fasten everything together or reinforce it with gum tape. Now I'm going to be putting gum tape on all the pieces of veneer which come in this kit. There is another piece of poplar which you see, which is a little bit larger in the kit. That will be for backers when we go to glue up. But the gum tape has a shiny surface, a matte surface, and it needs to be properly wetted to be able to fasten onto the veneer. Again, sponge cup, go through, strike it off, and place it down onto the veneer. I put it on, and if the tape is ever so slightly translucent, it works, it's working until everything is covered. Afterwards, I can trim it here with a scalpel or with an X-Acto knife to be able to break it free, and then I'll be putting them underneath in the magic press to have them dry properly. Now the veneer has been drying in the magic press for about 20 minutes. It's time to assemble the packet. So all the gum tape is put on, slight overlaps. It all looks good. With your kit, or if you can get this from a hardware store or a tool store, these are small pin nails which go into a 21 gauge pin nailer. And I want to clip them off with these small little pliers or beading pliers. And as you see the arrows are going down, I want to all stick them into this small piece of foam pointed down. When I nail this packet together with the nails, I want the pointed end going down to separate the fibers of the wood instead of punching them through with the blunt end of the nail. So now that the nails are prepared, I can now start preparing the packet. So all the gum tape in this will go face up. This is going to be the show face of the veneer. When I glue all the veneer down, or this entire marquetry segment, all the gum tape is actually going to be on the top surface. This is my glue surface, and this is the show face. So the first thing is I'm going to put my background down. This is the walnut burl. And I'm going to put it here in the packet to make sure that it lines up with all pieces, parts, and segments that I need. The next thing that I'd like to select, I think, is the maple. You know, it doesn't really matter which order you put it in, as long as you remember all the pieces that you have to put in. And I'm going to take this maple and do it 190 degrees to the other. This will give me the ability to select out which piece of veneer will work best for this job. Also, I want to make sure that this maple has enough room to be able to get these small center of these buds. The next thing will be the cherry, and I think the cherry, again, I'm going to run one perpendicular to the other, and that will get all the petals which are going vertically and all the petals that are going horizontally. And that can come in here. Now the leaves here, I'm going to use one for the leaves here, and you know, I don't really need this full sheet for just getting the two leaves out, but you know, I can certainly cut it down or place just a smaller piece in there, but we have enough to really use it for this full piece. And I'm going to put one area perpendicular to another, but it looks like I'm going to have a problem putting this in. It doesn't really kind of go all the way, so I will need to trim off a little bit here so I can get it up into that packet. Now it's time to nail it. What I have is some small 1/2-inch foam. You can use cardboard or you can use a thicker piece of foam. But I want to put these nails in and to secure all these layers together. The pin nails will, once I pull them out of my assembled packet, will come out very easily. I'll be able to pry them out, and the hole itself will re-knit, and the fibers will close over that hole so you won't even see that it was there. For this project, I believe that 6 nails will be enough, and I need to clench them over on this side. So I'm clenching them out from the center. I'm just putting them part way into the packet. They are poking out underneath, and that's why I'm using the foam, so I can actually get this packet off. If you do it on a hard surface, you'll nail this packet to this platen. Not a good thing. And the last one here, 6 nails is adequate for this packet. Now it comes time to clench the other side. As I have separated these nails all clenched down from the center outward, I also need to do it here from the center outward. You always want that nail to clench this way like a staple. If you put one nail over this way and the other nail on the bottom of the packet this way, the packet is liable to shift. Now this I like to do on a hard surface. If I try to clench it on this foam, this nail will just come out. So on a hard surface, and I want to cover these ends on the bottom of the packet with a little piece of tape. This will allow me to cut it with ease on the scroll saw, and those little nail heads or these clenched nails won't hang up on the side of the table. Now the starter hole is a small hole. It's not drilled out. You don't want to remove any material here. What you want to do is ease open a hole, and that can be done with a dental probe or a sharpened nail. So here's what I'm going to use to pierce this hole. As you can see, the marquetry is laid out with a numbering system, and I want to start at the middle of an image and work my way out. If I cut the perimeter of my image and the rows with none of the interior pieces cut out yet, the rows will fall apart because all the nails are secured along the outside. So I do need to start in the middle of my image, and I'm going to start it right at the juncture of 1, 2, 2, and 3. You can see here's 1, 2, 3. This is generally the middle of the image, and I need to start it right here. And now it's time to start cutting. I have several scroll saws in the shop. This one I find very useful, readily available. It's a fine tool. I gave it a good review in a scroll saw article. And the first thing I'd like to do is close up the throat plate a little bit so little pieces don't get dropped down underneath. All right, let's see. That should be adequate. And now I want to thread the packet. So what that will involve is taking the pierced hole on the other side right here and feeding it through with this blade, poking it up through and fastening it on to my upper guide. The teeth are pointed down, of course, and now I can tension it till it's about high C. It's ready to cut. Now, a couple of things that I like in addition would be, number one, a foot pedal. That allows me to control the on-off without using my hands. A small little blower to be able to blow the dust away. And I'm going to start by cutting out piece number 1. As far as the speed goes, I want to arrange the speed of the saw so there's the least amount of vibration. As you can see, this blade, when I do it with slow speed, this blade is moving back and forth quite a bit with this double arm technique. But when I start cutting, you notice that the blade smooths down and it no longer moves around like that. Oops, you see that I've drifted off the line here, but it's no matter. I can always continue to do light edits, get it back onto the line. Don't go back and recut that, otherwise it'll open up a gap. So I just want to re-edit as we're coming along. Okay, there's some other things that you can see in this image. There are places where there's going to be vane leaves where I'll drive inside the vane leaf first, back the blade out and cut the perimeter and drop out the entire piece. There's also places like this where there'll be a small notch, and to be able to turn around to another direction, I don't want to turn the blade like this. If I do, you see this blade is actually twisted in the slot, and if I would start it up, there's a high likelihood that it might break. So I need to turn it while the saw is in operation. That's done by taking the blade. I need to go this way. So I'm going to actually pull the packet in this direction, spin it while it's running, shift the pressure onto the back of the packet, and then continue on. Okay, over to one side, shift it to the back of the packet, spin the packet around, and continue cutting. And the way to get this packet out with all the pieces is to hold it down with a pencil or the dental probe or sharp pointy thing and lift the packet around it and take the pieces out. This has all the pieces and the one that we're going to use from this packet. I'll put these aside, and now I can go on to part number 2. So as I move along the cutting process, you can see I have a board where I'm offloading all my parts. And this is in order to keep organization of all the pieces that come out. As you can see, I'm numbered 1 through 9 here, and this is 10 through 19, 20 through 29. This is a standard board. Now this project has maybe 23, 24 pieces, including the background. And as I cut them, I can offload them. Here I just got this one, number 19. This is the buds. And it allows me to know exactly where everything is. If I need to come back and get something from leaf 5 or 15 or 16, I know exactly where they are. So as I'm almost done cutting, and let me finish that up, and then we'll go on to assembly. I'm going down the leaf vein first, and I can always back up. And when I back up a blade, I always like to run it so it tends not to stick as much. And now the perimeter. So there's one more thing that I still have yet to do. I have to cut the oval out. And since it's not really a pierce cut, I can come in from the outside. So I'm going to tension the blade in here. Yeah, that's about right. And let me cut my oval. So I'm all done with cutting. The oval is now cut out. And I'm going to leave it in the packet for right now. That keeps it supported. And all the scrap or all the waste from this project I'm going to put aside. I never want to throw anything away because I could use certain parts or interchange parts. Welcome to Marquetry 101, Segment 3. In this segment, we will be exploring sand shading, separating the pieces out and preparing for that. We'll be assembling our pattern and preparing the veneer for glue up. Each stack here, I have a number of pieces, parts, bits and pieces. You see the gum tape is showing up, and on the other side I'll see the actual color. And out of all these pieces, I'm going to pull out the cartoon, the two maple pieces, I'm not sure which one I'm going to use yet, and maybe a spare piece, let's see, this cherry piece. All these pieces here will go over into one corner of the board. These are all my spare parts. Again, I really don't throw anything away until the project is completed, and I'll put these back in its position on number 1 for sand shading. For the leaves, I need to select the proper grain orientation. So I have the bottom cartoon, the background, which I'm not going to use, and here are the two different leaf colors. As you can see, this one has grain going crosswise, and this is going the correct direction. I'll still pull out both of these leaves because I'll try it on one leaf to get the proper sand shading consistency, and so I have a backup, and I'll do the second one as well. So there we go. So when I'm all finished, it'll be time to sand shade. So I'm going to take this small frying pan and put silica sand in there. This is washed sand. You can also use play sand from Lowe's or Home Depot. And I probably want anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to half an inch, 3/4 of an inch of sand depth will be about right. But I'm going to let this heat up for about 5 minutes. So I'm well along in my sand shading, and the way I do that is I always keep these together with the cartoon, and I can see what part of the cartoon will require shading on this petal leaf. So let me see here. This is a piece of cherry. That's where it goes, and I can see when I put it down into the sand that it'll get a very faint line. I'm also making sure that I get it right where the cartoon designates where I should have that shading. Stick it down into the sand. Now, if it needs to shade within 5 to 10 seconds. If it's going too fast, what will happen is it'll char or burn the veneer, and too slow, it'll just heat the whole piece of veneer up. So if I can demonstrate, this is actually way too much. If you sand shade this much, it is too much, and it would indicate to me that it may be a little bit too hot. So you can either go more towards, don't put the piece in deep enough, or better yet, turn down the heat to a more acceptable level. On leaves, like this, you'll see that I have shading on the back end. Again, it needs to be in about 5 to 10 seconds. Still a little bit warm. And along this bottom part right here. If I need to shade inside the leaf, this gives it an additional illusion or depth. I want to actually take this leaf and tweak it to the side, and I can dip it in, shading just that part of it. So all the pieces have been sand shaded, and now comes time to rehydrate. The reason that I rehydrate is when you heat wood up, or veneer especially, and sand shade it, puts it under tremendous heat, several hundred degrees, and it shrinks down in size. What I'd like to do is rehydrate them with moisture so they expand back out to their original size. The way I do that is I take each piece from here. Again, I have sometimes 2 or multiple parts for each component, and I'll put them down on this sponge cup, the same sponge that I use for gum taping. The wood side down, I tap it lightly just to give it ever so slight bit of moisture, and I put it down on this platen. In this case, it's gum face down, to introduce a little bit of moisture here. Now, as I do it, you'll notice that the wood is beginning to really warp and change, so I put another platen on top of it, which keeps it flat, and I can go on to the next one now. And I keep the cartoon with the pieces that I'm rehydrating, and the cartoon goes through the entire process until assembly. Okay, the pieces have been rehydrating for about 10 to 15 minutes, and now it's time to restack them back on our grid for final assembly. Final assembly occurs after we have taken this packet apart, and now I would like to use some type of glasses or safety protection to remove the nails. Now, I don't want to clip the nails. All I want to do is pry them up and lever them out using a pair of nippers. That nail will swing straight, and it will actually allow the pin to come out in one piece. Now, all the parts, everything is located in here. The bottom cartoon, this is the one that we need right here. Cherry, maple, poplar, and the top cartoon. Now it's time to assemble the pattern. For this, I need to stick it together in some way to hold it into one sheet, and one of the very simple ways I can do this is with shelving paper that you can get at a hardware store. And I find with this shelving paper, it's nice to put actually 2 layers down, one on top of the other. That way it tends to be a lot more pliable, and it tends to stick a lot better. So I'm going to mount this down, and sticky side up, and I'm going to place my background. In assembling, I want to start with the extremities first. These pieces on the outside, I'll need to snuggle it in and start building in towards the center. So for this, I would need some of the leaves. Like here is a leaf number 16. I can see this leaf 16 here, and it needs to be flipped over onto the other side, back in this little spot right here. I'll put it in and I'll spread it out. The adhesive is a little bit gummy here, and I'll spread it out to tuck it up against the background. Now comes time for the flowers. I'm going to start with the extremities. The flowers which are on either side, and that would be part number 21. Part number 21 right here. And this gets flipped over onto this side. So this is where it fits. And then so on and so forth. And as I continue to assemble, next will be the bud, next will be this side, and then again I'll start building the rows and building this other side and pull this whole pattern together. So my marquetry pattern is complete. There are a couple of small things that I need to fix with it. One is this small little area here where a piece of the veneer broke off. And what I need to do is take a little piece of matching veneer, and this is in the background, and I can get it pretty close. Again, I much rather have a gap than a lap, and I would almost be okay with glue or finish filling this little gap area, but to do a repair is very easy. Just put a little piece of veneer in here, holding it, cut it in with the back of the scalpel, and burnish it in. So now that the panel is completely done, and I've scuff sanded a little bit just to make sure that there is nothing that's standing up, it looks like it's complete. Welcome to this final segment of Marquetry 101. This is where we're going to glue up the veneer, sand it, and finish it. All right, in preparation for glue up, there's a few things that we need to gather. One thing that I'd like to clarify, in your optional kit you had another 2 pieces of poplar or other veneer that we're going to be using for a backer. This oval is going to need to be glued to something, and I'm going to glue it to 2 other layers of veneer to make essentially a piece of plywood. I also have a clamping caul, which is MDF on one side, plywood on the other, some visqueen polyethylene plastic or the bag that your project came in, some canvas, and this canvas is bushing canvas. Like you saw in Veneering 101, it allows me to press up different thicknesses of veneer. So I'll put a layer of canvas down. This is the way it's going to go here. This polyethylene plastic. And I'm ready to start spreading glue. I never apply glue straight onto my fancy face veneer. Just as I would glue up a panel of any kind, I'll treat this middle ply or this piece of veneer as my core. So I'll apply glue only onto this, and I will stick it down onto my marquetry, apply glue only onto this middle layer to apply my backer. That's about right. Lay this down on top. Right here, this would be a good spot for it. Sort of about as much glue as you would put on a wall that you wanted to cover with one coat of medium paint. Now I place my, make sure there's no debris on. Wrap it with the plastic, or I've put it into the bag. Top platen. And now it's time to start working it down. I think that it'll be enough to put 4 clamps on this. Okay, this is cured for about 6 hours. It was nice and warm, so the glue should be pretty well cured. Now, one thing I need to mention with this using PVA, polyvinyl acetate, or yellow or white glue, you know, it comes in a sealed container and it dries by evaporation. So when I take it out of the bottle and I put it into this bag or between visqueen or plastic, it doesn't have a chance to cure all the way because the moisture has nowhere to go. The panel should have glued up. There should be enough air inside the veneer to have cured this glue. I do still want to leave it, let it set for probably a half an hour to an hour for the glue to completely cure before I take off my shelving paper and begin to sand. So this has had some time to cure. I've aired it out for a half an hour to an hour, and you can see that the shelving paper does come off, and it leaves a slight residue. And this residue I can either scuff off, I can rub off, or I can actually use alcohol in a rag and I can remove any of the adhesive left over from this shelving paper. This came off fairly cleanly, so looks like it's doing okay. I really like this particular brand of shelving paper. All right, fastening it down onto a extra platen. Just the perimeter. This veneer is a little bit thicker right here where I have the oval. So there's 2 layers here, 3 layers here. So it makes it very easy for me to mount down. Okay, it's all fastened down with the tape. Now it's time to scuff sand. I scuff sand starting with 100 or even 80 grit sometimes. I would like to break through the gum tape, but I don't want to go too far. The veneer is very thin, and I use the gum tape as a guide on how much tape is left. And I know that if I have still a little bit of tape on there, by the time I've stopped scuff sanding, I know I have veneer underneath. If the gum tape is gone, there's a good chance that the veneer is as well. So I'm setting it up on this clamping jig and have a block here with sandpaper glued on. Good. I think that this is adequately scuff sanded. I still have some of the residue of tape here, which is good to know that I have some veneer on there. And now I need to wet it and remove the rest of the tape. I like to what I call lightly wet it. This is maybe a little bit of excessive water, but it shouldn't hurt anything. You know, if the veneer bubbles, I want it to bubble now, not later. Not when after I got 50 coats of French polish on it or lacquer. If it's going to fail, this is a true test. So it'll get through this stage, it'll last forever. Wetting it will reactivate this gum tape adhesive and allow me to remove the rest of it using this sharpened putty knife. It's a flexible putty knife and sharpen it to a razor's edge. So it looks like the rest of the gum tape has come off, and I can burnish it off. And this water that's on there, what happens if the veneer is loose or isn't glued properly? The veneer has nowhere to go when it expands except up. It produces a bubble. I can see those bubbles by holding it up to the light and pressing it down, and you can actually see the bubbles coming up, and when you push down, it gets wet around that bubble where you push the water out. Like we did in Veneering 101, I would take that bubble, slit it along the grain. If it's a burl, I would make an undulating line, or with a straight grain piece of wood, I would cut it straight, pry up that little piece of veneer, and work a little bit of this polyurethane glue, this Gorilla Glue, down into the crack with a toothpick, or even smear some up on top, and put it back in the press with some visqueen or polyethylene plastic to clamp it up. Well, it looks pretty good, but let me really see. Looks good. I think I'm ready to go on to the next step, which will be cutting the oval out with the scroll saw. Okay, cutting out with the scroll saw. As you see, I'm just doing the outer perimeter right up next to the dark burl, cutting off the subply and the core ply. Now it's time for the final finish. I'll seal up this piece like I do all my furniture with shellac. Shellac is a natural substance, alcohol soluble, and I use this bullseye clear shellac, which is quite good for sealing up my veneer work. The way that I apply it, it can be applied with a brush or spray, but my preference is with a shellac pad. This is cheesecloth wrapped up in a lint-free cloth, and what this does, it just drives the shellac right into the surface. Occasionally, if it's too thick, I can thin it down with alcohol, but in this way, I can put on a sealer coat, which will allow me to see any defects or any remaining defects or gaps or anything that I need to take care of before my final coat. I have a small area right here between this petal and the background that needs to be filled. I'll do that with Famo Professional No. 1 filler. This filler is a very creamy consistency, and it's acetone based, so it shouldn't affect the alcohol too much. Where I have is this little gap, and let's see, it was right here. I'll put it on. Anything else? Yeah, right here, there's another one right here. Now, I will leave this on until it dries, probably about 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes, depending on your humidity. Okay, the putty is dry. With just 220 paper, I can scuff it back down to the veneer. And now I can shellac it one more time to make sure that it's all sealed all the way through. Already dry. So very thin coat. And now it's time to lacquer. Okay, I've put a couple of coats of lacquer on this now, and between each coat I've buffed down with 4/0 steel wool. And with this semi-gloss, it looks really good. It's filled and there's no gaps or no lines. And now this is ready to apply onto my piece of furniture. So this concludes the fourth and final segment of Marquetry 101, which was part of a 3-class series of hand skills online program that I've made. You have now seen and learned the skills on how to create marquetry with wood veneer. I use these techniques all the time to create furniture, both large and small. And if you want to learn more about advanced techniques, get my masterclass DVD and book called Marquetry. I wish to thank all of my supporters and help that I've received from many others to make this class possible, and I hope to see you again soon in a future class. Until then, have fun doing woodwork.